Africa Month is well underway, but it started on a tough note. Violence and fighting broke out in Sudan, where we understand UNICEF is now stepping up humanitarian aid for children who've borne the brunt of this latest conflict. And this comes as the African Union is said to be marking this year 21 years since its formation. How far have we come as a continent? Let's unpack some of these issues with Liesl-Louw Vadran. She's a senior researcher with the International Crisis Group, and she also consults for the AU. Liesl, good afternoon. Welcome to today, and thank you very much for your time. Ordinarily, in May, which is Africa Month, we tend to focus on the arts and the culture and the celebrations of our diversity and unity. But it is a good time to be reviewing the journey so far, especially for the AU, which is now an adult at 21 years old. How is the AU currently? Is it in a good, healthy state?
Yes, afternoon, Dan. Thank you for having me. It is tricky because the African Union, as it enters its third decade, really has a lot of challenges still ahead. Notably, I mean, just the organization itself and making sure it's independent and funding its own operations. I mean, we can talk about that, and funding its peacekeeping. But I do think that in the last 2 decades, huge strides have been made when it comes to, being more efficient, being able to ensure African integration. I mean, that's what the OAU started off as, ensuring countries work together. We launched the African Continental Free Trade Area in 2018. We saw in 2020 the African Union really stepping up when it came to the COVID-19 response. So honestly, and even last year, we saw really the African Union being Africa's voice when it came to the climate debate. Obviously, there are people that would say the African Union can do much better. It can do much better. But the big challenge, I think, now is as you said, I mean, the situation in Sudan or these other conflicts. We honestly really need the African Union to step up and be able to make peace, because if you can't make peace, all the other issues of development and trade and so on won't follow.
Yeah, I mean, its overriding objective as the AU today is to drive what it calls, that's the AU, as you know, Liesl, an integrated, prosperous and peaceful Africa. Yet 60 years since the foundation of the OAU in Addis Ababa in May 1963, the guns on our continent are not yet silent. Besides Sudan, as I read in my intro, we have other conflicts like in northern Mozambique, for example.
Exactly. And we do have, what is interesting, Dan, is that we do have countries and the region willing to step in. I mean, we sent troops, as you know, and as you and I have discussed. SADC has sent troops. We are, to a large extent, also paying for it to save lives, to make peace. So we have the SADC mission, we have the Rwandans. Then there are many other missions where African troops are in Somalia, in the Sahel, in Eastern DRC. I mean, there's an East African force that was just launched last year. And then this week we heard SADC announcing that it's also going to send a force to the Eastern DRC. So there seems to be really a willingness. What the problem is, number one, funding it, coordinating it, making sure these military interventions are efficient, that there's enough emphasis also on issues of mediation, and that there's a kind of a political solution, a political strategy, not just having the military go in, try and make peace, but there isn't that kind of high-level political will to look for an exit strategy, basically, as well.
Yeah, you've mentioned the Africa Free Trade Continental Agreement, which kicked in last year with a lot of hope and promise. And currently, I don't get a sense of where it's at. And when you look at our continent in terms of opportunities, and it's a young continent. I think the average age on our continent, Liesl, you'll correct me if I'm wrong, is around about 30 years or so, just across the continent. It's a very young continent, full of youthful energy. but I don't know if the AU is able to harness all of this.
Yes, absolutely. Youthful energy, a lot of potential. So maybe just first on the African Continental Free Trade Area. So most countries signed up in 2018, signed the agreement. Then we now have ratifications. I think more than 40 countries out of the 55 member states of the African Union have actually ratified the agreement. So it's one of the resolutions, decisions by the African Union that has got the most uptake in the last couple of years. And so last year it entered into force, and we actually only have about 6 or 8 countries that are actually now trading, and it's almost just symbolic, you know, tea from Kenya to Ghana and chocolate from Ghana to Kenya or something like that. I can't remember, but they are, so it's not massive trading at a massive scale yet, because obviously it's extremely complex. You know, making sure also that intra-African trade is intra-African trade. So it's African products that can trade to other African countries at lower tariffs. We can't have a situation where Chinese products are, or other products from other parts of the world come in and then masquerade as African products, you know. So it's very, very complex. But we're getting there. It's been launched. It is really holds immense hope for prosperity on the continent. And then the issue of youth, you're absolutely right. The African Union itself is conscious of that. I think in many of its programs and its decisions, got youth ambassadors that I see are speaking at the United Nations and so on. It's trying to include youth voices in its decision making, even when it comes to peacekeeping, even when it comes to mediation. There's youth mediators and so on. But obviously, you know, I don't want to say that's symbolic, but that's more sort of institutional. The real issue is that all the development programs and the peacemaking should, you know, it is about the youth. It is about our continent. So it includes saving lives of young people, ending wars, disarming many of these fighters that are young people themselves, basically.
Yeah. As we conclude, Liesl, just your final thoughts looking ahead around about the AU. I mean, it's got that vision. Is it 2063? I think that was articulated very strongly at the time, I recall, when Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma was leading the executive team at the AU, the African Union Commission. Do you think the AU will achieve the objectives set out in Vision 2063?
Yes, I mean, it's an amazing blueprint, really, that, you know, the former AU Commission chairperson, Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma, as you say, right, and her team drew up. And we've had a 10-year plan, and then there's going to be another 10-year plan. So really, it's sort of on track. We need to get peace, as I said.
Yeah.
Looking forward, I think a priority is for the African Union to be Africa's voice in the world, which is another big topic. And then, yes, silence the guns, an absolute priority.
So peace, stability, and silencing of the guns. And in a yes or a no answer, Liesl, I don't mean to put you on the spot, we also need a youthful leadership across the continent. I mean, we have too many old guys still in charge.
For sure. I mean, we have leaders that have been there for 30 years and, you know, many countries that you and I can name. We're also electing new leadership for the African Union itself in early 2025, next year. So that is a challenge.
Yeah,
so
and our president is 70 years old. Matamela Ramaphosa is 70 years old. Okay, thank you very much.
He's not the oldest.
Thank you very much, Liesl. I had to bring it in because our continent is youthful. Both you and I agree we need to get those young voices around the table, especially young women who can lead the way. That's Liesl-Louw Vadran, a senior advisor for the African Union with the International Crisis Group.